getting settled, let's get settled too in our chairs and in our thoughts and with our permission to be here as fully conscious as we can in this place, in this moment. I learned from a Lakota friend many years ago that in every circle, as this is, every gathering, we will find our healers, our teachers, our prophets, our guides. So in this place, we say yes to being an inspiration to one another, an encouraging presence to one another. It's another way to talk about our own two hands. What do we have right here, right now, that can be given over to the divine and extraordinary consciousness? What is it that we can do? What's that how that Elijah talked about? So one of the hows is that we come together from time to time in ceremony to symbolically mark what's happening in our inner work and in our inner process. So last week we did the burning bowl, and the whole idea was surrender. And surrender then leads to that extraordinary listening to what the true qualities of our divine consciousness are. And from the book Divine Audacity, this writer says, surrender is releasing the human limitations and yielding to our spiritual or divine identity. We release the false notion of powerlessness. We release the false notion of sinfulness and negative interpretations of ourselves. Michael Beckwith says, surrender is freedom from the bondage of fear. We free ourselves from living in the neurotic consciousness of me, myself, and I. Let's take a deep breath on that. Surrender releases us from living in a neurotic consciousness where we're concerned only with me, myself, and I. And what happens after surrender is yielding to our spiritual nature. We give way for the wisdom of the self to arise in our awareness. We give way. We do that. For the wisdom of the self to arise in our awareness. If we had no damaging concepts of ourselves, what would remain? I'll ask that again. If we had no damaging concepts of ourselves, what would remain?
Nothing.
Love.
So as we go into a time of silence in preparation for the white stone ceremony, I ask that we move into deep listening. Beyond any damaging concepts or old ideas about who we are or are not. Beyond any concepts of our limitations, what we can or cannot do. Beyond any generational naming of who we were through our old belief systems, we surrender that to listen deeply to the real, true naming of who we are. And in the naming of who we are, we open to our next steps being guided by that knowingness of who we are. Our next steps are guided by this awareness of our true identity. Who would we be if we had no damaging concepts of ourselves? How would we see others if we were not seeing with damaging concepts of who they are? We take a few deep breaths and we go into the silence for deep listening. Ask you to imagine right now with you in your circle are your healers, your teachers, your guides, your angels, your beloveds, the friends and the unseen. I ask you to imagine that they stand with you in your circle as you and I open to the deeper naming of who we are. We give thanks that in this moment, in this place, at this time, we open more fully to knowing ourselves as the light of the world. No matter what, no matter where. The light of the world. And we say, so it is, and so we let it be. Namaste. So we have light. And light is a wonderful thing, and Spirit must have known that because the main message of the teachings of Jesus is you're the light of the world. So going beyond all our fear, all of our wackiness, all of our stories that we have about ourselves, about how bad we might be or how bad the world might be, we want to keep going deeper beneath those messages to this idea that the great spiritual saints would never say anything like that to us if it were not true. So turn to somebody and say, it's true, you're the light of the world. With gusto. Okay, so we're going to start with Revelations today. That's the last book of the Bible, and we'll work our way forward all the way to Genesis. Does that work for you? Okay. And then we'll have potluck. Okay. All right. So this ceremony is based on a scripture out of the book of Revelations, and it says, let anyone who has an ear listen Deep listening. Let anyone who has those deep listening ears go ahead and listen to what the Spirit is saying. To everyone who conquers or who overcomes that fear consciousness, I will give of the hidden manna, that inner insight, that inner wisdom, that reservoir of living wisdom. And I will give a white stone, and on the white stone is written a new name that no one knows except the one who receives it. Now, I'm wondering if you have this idea in you that I have in me, and that is the first time that someone told me that I was anything less than the light of the world. How early does that happen? So I think sometimes, what would it have been like the first time somebody gave me a message that said you're less than? That I would have said at 3 or 2 or 4, that's just not true. Like when David fired his neurologist who said he would never get better, the condition would only get worse. David said, you're fired. So what would have happened if we had fired those folks or those people? So don't come back till you remember who I am. So there's something in us that needs to do that, because those old voices, I don't know if you've noticed, but they will come up now and then to say, yeah, but you know you're not the light of the world. Now those voices, they come to my house sometimes. And we need to be able to say, you know what? You're fired. I know something else to be true. So, the White Stone ceremony is about the naming of who we are rather than who we are not. I don't know about you, but I've had enough experience now with naming who I am not.
Amen.
Had enough experience with that. I'm done with that. I want to build up this reservoir of knowingness within me of who I am. I've had enough practice with the other. So Eric Butterworth, one of our great Unity teachers, he had an epiphany. And it goes something like this. There is a creative intention working in you, and it's a force that transcends, everybody read this together, it transcends mistakes and wrong choices and makes all things work for good. So that creative intention that's working in us, what are other names for that? Inspiration, creative intention, divine guidance, courage, understanding, clarity, the faith, the stamina, the strength to keep moving as if we know that we're being guided by this divine presence, that we don't get lost in this idea that we don't have support surrounding us and support within us. It's the 3 wise men idea. We've got these qualities and aspects within us, and sometimes our world teaches us that we don't have access to that. And that's just not true. That thought's fired. You're fired. What's true is we have this creative intention working in us. And it goes beyond all those moments when we convince ourselves that we feel less than. It beats the heck out of those old voices. This creative intention. Adyashanti, we've done his book here in our Wednesday book group. He has an ongoing epiphany. He calls it the ongoing epiphany. The ongoing awakening, which says this is the perennial mystic revelation of awakening to our true nature, that we are one with divine. It is the perennial mystic revelation, meaning it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. This idea, oh, I remember now, I'm one with this one presence. I'm one with this divine wisdom. I'm one with this idea that even Jesus says, I'm one with the Father. I'm one with the one presence. But don't we talk ourselves out of that? Mm-hmm. Don't we sometimes feel excluded from that? Am I the only one? I've got work to do. So Fillmore also had an epiphany, our co-founder. I love this epiphany. We could spend months on this. There is pouring into humankind a perpetual stream of ideas that the individual arranges as thoughts and forms, as substance and life. There's this ongoing pouring out of perpetual stream of ideas. And then here's the hitch. It's a divine and holy hitch. With this outpouring of divine, this perpetual stream of ideas, then we decide how to interpret and we decide what to do with it.
I want a dictatorship.
Yeah. The wisdom can be pouring out on all of us, and we can all have different aspects of the interpretation of, like Elijah's question. How do we do this? How do we show up as the light of the world? How do we open up to this epiphany consciousness, this extraordinary consciousness? We keep listening, and we listen, and we all receive what we're supposed to receive individually as the expression of that light. But here's what we human beings do. I've observed my species now for a while. And what my species does is, one person has a divine idea. Oh, this is a great idea. We're at one with the one presence. That is an incredible idea. Oh, let's start a group. And we'll gather around this idea. And we're going to need a building, so let's start a church. And we're going to need a lot of people, so let's tell them that the only way for you to have this divine epiphany is come be with us in our group. That's what our species does. And then we forget that revelation consciousness wasn't just meant for the one around whose teachings the whole group started. The whole group is intended to have the same epiphanies and the same revelations. That's where we've gotten a little bit tripped up. So, how does that happen? We listen. We go into the silence. We pay attention in our moments of pondering and prayer and meditation and the silence. We listen. We pay attention to the how. I love Elijah's question this morning. Live in that question. How do I show up now? How do I show up today? So what are your epiphanies? And who are you? And what is the naming of your true essence? So let's just take a deep breath. Y'all have been around here long enough, some of you, to know I quote Rumi on that one a lot. Who are you really and what is your real name? You know, that'll stop you in your tracks. Especially when we're having a hard time with anything. It's good to have a friend who will say to you, amidst your confusion or fear or upsetness, they will ask, well, who are you really? You know, are you this fear right now? Are you this confusion right now? Are you this uncertainty right now? No! Those are temporary experiences. Who we really are goes beyond all confusion and fear and uncertainty. This is a good time for somebody to say amen. Amen. So, in our epiphanies, we're set free from damaging concepts of self. We're set free from other people's ideas of right and wrong. We're set free to shine our light brightly. Let's take a deep breath. How many of us have had those experiences where our lives are guided by what someone else thinks of us? Oh, that was a good Everybody go, Rather than guided by the inner revelation of who we are. We can be on top of the mountain. We can have a revelation. We're the light of the world. And then we go back down into the city and somebody goes, where'd you come from? Who are you? I'm the light of the world. Oh, really? The knowing of who we are is not shaken by what anybody else thinks. Can we say that again? The knowing of who we are is not shakable. That's why we want to continue to practice getting to that place where we access that wisdom, because it's unshakable. It's the unexplainable peace. It's the unexplainable feeling that all is well. It's unexplainable feeling that there's nothing we have to fix, nothing to be worked out. Who do you say you are? So in the book of Matthew, Jesus had once again provided food for the folks who forgot to stop at McDonald's on the way. He once again has been creating those opportunities for higher consciousness to move through and for experiences of miracles and healing and transformation. And so he asked his disciples, who do people say that I am, by the way? And they said to him, well, some say you're John the Baptist, and some say Elijah. And there's a whole teaching we could do there on the belief and reincarnation at that time. Some people say you're John the Baptist, returned from the dead, or Elijah, too, returned from the dead. Some say you're Jeremiah, or one of the great prophets. And Jesus said, well, who do you say that I am? And y'all remember Simon Peter, the impetuous one. He had to be the first one to speak. He said, well, you're the Christ. You're the Son of the living God. Now, what if you walked up to a good, trusted friend and you said to them, who do you say that I am? It might be good for us to ponder the answer for ourselves and for anyone else that we're holding in our hearts. Because we can bring forward lots of damaging concepts. Oh, you should have seen what she did when she was in college. She danced. You should have heard what they said back in 1979. You should have heard what they said last week. We can bring forward all the stories about who we're really not. What would happen if somebody said, do you know who Terry really is? She's the light of the world. She's a transformative consciousness, bringing peace into the world where there's confusion and dismay. And the people, I need to spend more time with Terry. Who do we say we are, and who do we say one another is?
Well, that's Margaret. She's going to the world.
Let's take a deep breath. In a few moments, we're going to receive our offering, and then the band is going to come up and do a song. And when we form our circle, as we always do, which is a very holy and powerful demonstration of who we really are, the circle of support, the circle of community, the circle of faith, the circle of remembering who we are even when the light's a little dim. And as we form that circle, I'm going to ask each one of you to make your way up here and choose a stone. And by the time we get in our circle, we'll all have our stones in our hands. And I'm going to invite you this week to spend some time with that stone and keep listening. And if you choose to write a word or 2 or 3 words, or paint the stone if you're less astute, take that stone and use it as a symbol. Because here's what happened back in the days of slavery in Rome. When a slave was set free, or when an indentured servant earned their freedom, like my ancestors did from Ireland, they earned their freedom and they're set free. They were given a white stone, and on that stone a new name to represent their freedom. They could no longer be taken into slavery because they were a free man or a free woman. So we set ourselves free by practicing naming the trueness of who we are rather than the untrueness. And the more our species names ourselves from the true essence of who we are, the more we will transform the consciousness of the world. And I just heard someone say, yeah, but there are no yeah buts here today. Do not talk yourself out of your brilliance and your light. So let's take a deep breath. It's a ceremony. It's symbolic of the inner work that we do in awakening. It's always symbolic of the inner transformational work. Some of us have lots of these stones lined up in our homes, on our altars, on our computers, on our desk. So what will this stone represent for you this year? And let it keep reminding you, whether you keep it in your pocket or on your desk or in your kitchen, let it keep reminding you of the brilliance, the light, the wonder that you are. We say, so it is, and so we let it be.